What's up, guys? Election predictions 2020, and this is part two to the 5 reasons that Donald Trump could win in 2020. And before I get started with the top 2 reasons, I would encourage you go to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and go on the subscribe watermark. And please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so you can get updated with the new videos every Monday and Thursday. All right, so one reason I think that Donald Trump has an advantage going into 2020, and one of the reasons that he probably will win, is Joe Biden. I think that Donald Trump will be a better debater than Joe Biden. We've seen Joe Biden on the debate stage in the 2020 Democratic primary debates, and I don't think anyone thought that he performed very, very well in those debates. He didn't really surprise people with his great debating skills. I think a lot of people think he just kind of held on. He's always been the front runner, and I think part of the reason why he won the 2020 Democratic nomination is because he was Barack Obama's vice president and he had that name recognition. But I don't think that Joe Biden will win any of the 3 debates versus Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has more energy. I think he is a better orator. Um, Although his vocab isn't necessarily that high, I think Donald Trump is better at just talking to the average American. And I think that while Joe Biden might stammer and he might get caught up with his words, I think Donald Trump will attack him on that. And if you remember back in 1984, Ronald Reagan had pretty low approval ratings, actually. They kind of mirrored Donald Trump's. But Ronald Reagan just destroyed Mondale in the debates. And in 1984 was the largest landslide in modern American history. Ronald Reagan won 49 states. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump will do this in 2020, but I do think having the 3 debates will help Donald Trump. And I think it will show that Donald Trump is a more energetic and stronger debater. If you remember Hillary Clinton, the media said that she won all 3 debates in 2016. I think this will be the opposite. I think Donald Trump will win the 3 debates. Second of all, I would say that Joe Biden, frankly, just is not a very energizing nominee. I think a lot of or the other Democrats in the 2020 Democratic primary race could be more energizing. For example, Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, even Bernie Sanders. I don't think a lot of Democrats are energetic about Biden. He still has been doing pretty well in the polls because I think he can um, grab some of those moderate and swing voters. But I think a lot of people will sit out of the 2020 election. Definitely some Bernie supporters who think that the DNC rigged the primary. They won't be happy. They might even go for Trump. And I think you'll see that a lot of younger voters who are really excited to vote for the first female president in 2016, maybe they won't be as enthused to vote for Joe Biden in 2020. And maybe on the night of the election in 2020, they'll find that they're busy doing other things, and it's not a top priority for them to go vote for Joe Biden. So I could definitely see voter turnout being lower in 2020, and this would definitely help Donald Trump because Donald Trump among his base is a very energizing figure. Next up, I would just say that Joe Biden does have some skeletons in his closet, much like Hillary Clinton did in 2016. But Joe Biden is not a perfect candidate by any means. If you remember during the Anita Hill hearings, he's still criticized by Democrats today on how he treated her, and this could affect him negatively in 2020. He voted for the 1994 crime bill that a lot of Democrats say is racist, and Joe Biden has apologized for this crime bill, but it's still going to weigh on people's minds. And Joe Biden recently has been accused of sexual assault, and he's also been accused of not necessarily sexual assault, but just being creepy and grabbing people in weird places, which definitely isn't as bad as sexual assault, but this might weigh on people's mind. And a lot of Bernie supporters on Twitter have said that really Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not that different. It's definitely a lot of angry Bernie supporters that Joe Biden won the Democratic nomination, but this message might some young activist Democrats might accept this message and be like, I'm sitting out the election just because I'm so repulsed by both candidates, even if I'm repulsed by Donald Trump more. And next up is that Joe Biden is just a gaffe machine. I mean, I don't really need to explain this. All I need to do is type into YouTube Joe Biden gaffes, and you'll just see. And frankly, this is just embarrassing for Joe Biden, and I think it will give the Trump campaign a lot of material to run in negative campaign ads. And lastly is Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden will be, I think, the biggest the biggest scandal type thing for Joe Biden because the Republican Senate has already talked about investigating the Hunter Biden situation, and I think that the average American won't really know a lot about this scandal, but all they will associate with Hunter Biden is corruption and nepotism, and I definitely think this will hurt Joe Biden. Just like Hillary Clinton had with the emails, I think Hunter Biden could be the equivalent of emails or Benghazi for Hillary Clinton. All right, so the number one reason why I think that Donald Trump could win in 2020 is the coronavirus. And what the Democrats wanted to make the 2020 election about and what they thought the 2020 election would be about was the Charlottesville, when Donald Trump said that there were good people on both sides, and the media, I mean, you could say that the media twisted his words or kind of thought that he was saying that neo-Nazis were good people or white supremacists. This is what you heard a lot in the media. I don't think that's exactly what Donald Trump was going for, but still, it was a mistake. And there was a lot of news articles that are like, the Trump presidency is over. This is the last straw. This is what people will reject Donald Trump. And even in Joe Biden's first campaign video, what he said is, I can restore the soul of the country that was lost when Donald Trump said these comments about Charlottesville. Next up, I think Democrats thought the 2020 election would be about the Mueller report. They thought the Mueller report would be very damaging, and that this Russia collusion was, people were really going to be angry that Trump supposedly asked for foreign aid in the election. I think in general, the Mueller report was more of a dud than Democrats wanted it to be. But I think definitely with the coronavirus, it's going to overshadow the Mueller report a lot. And thirdly, I think this got a lot of attention before the 2018 midterms with family separation of children in cages at the border. This was Donald Trump's zero tolerance immigration policy. And I definitely think this helped the Democrats in 2018 because a lot of people were horrified. If you look at public opinion polls on this, Americans, the majority of Americans are against family separation and children in cages, which makes sense. And I don't think that the messaging from the Trump administration was very good about this. They changed their mind on this policy. Some people could say it's a flip-flop just because they realized that this policy was not very good politically. And next up is the impeachment. I think this is what a lot of people thought that the 2020 election was going to be about. Democrats like Nancy Pelosi thought that impeaching Trump would hurt his reelection chances. That's what some Democrats were saying. And I think that's what people thought that people were going to be voting on in 2020, whether they thought Donald Trump should be impeached or not. But what the 2020 election will really about is how President Trump handled the coronavirus. For George Bush's 2004 reelection, all anyone would talk about was 9/11 and the war on terror and the war in Iraq. And I think this definitely helped George Bush win reelection in 2004. People saw him as a wartime president, and I think people rallied around George Bush because they trusted him to handle the crisis, even though later in his second term, I think more people were more suspicious about the war in Iraq, and most people thought it was a mistake. But I think that Donald Trump is very worried about his re-election chances, and I think he will do anything he has to do to make the American people happy with his coronavirus response. I think that Americans are already seeing President Trump as a wartime president. Um, and I think that Donald Trump will listen to his advisors, his political advisors, even more than his economic advisors, and maybe even his CDC advisors. Um, and I think that Trump will be willing to spend massive amounts of money in stimulus bills. And even I read a newspaper article that Trump wants his signature on the stimulus checks that are going to every American under a certain income threshold. And if Donald Trump is successful in this, I think this will boost his reelection chances a lot. If every American gets a check for $1,200 or $1,000 and it has Donald Trump's signature, even people who aren't very political are going to be like, look, this check is from Donald Trump. I'm going to reward him in 2020 in the election. And so I think that Trump's instincts on this, even though that I would say it would probably go against most conservative ideas just to hand checks people. This is a very unique situation. And I think President Trump could leverage the coronavirus crisis in helping him in 2020. You've already seen he has an uptick in approval, even though maybe it's not as much as some people might thought. But he's kind of changed how he talks, I think, to be more serious. He recognizes as of now that the coronavirus is a huge problem and a crisis that needs to be dealt with. And in this whole crisis, the approval rating that's actually been the lowest has been the media. People still don't trust the media, and they probably don't like these gotcha questions that they're asking to Trump in the press briefings. And I actually think that while some people criticize Trump in his press briefings, I think he's actually shined in some moments. And Trump was joking about the ratings for these press conferences. And I mean, I think it was a little tone deaf to talk about ratings in the middle of the coronavirus crisis. But it is true. People are watching the coronavirus press conferences. I think most of the major cable news channels are still airing them, and they're every night. And if the average person just turns on TV and sees Trump behind this podium, the White House podium, I think they're going to think that Trump is very presidential and deserves to be president, and they will reward him in 2020 at the ballot box. And as you can see, there's already some headlines why some Democrats worry the coronavirus could help Trump win re-election. And you can't see this one down here, but it's basically said the New York Times article that says coronavirus gives Trump a chance to make good on his promises. So I think Trump could leverage the coronavirus to his advantage in 2020. All right, so lastly, thank you for watching my video. Please like and subscribe. And please comment on how you like this video. Do you want more of these types of videos? Or do you like the shorter separate videos or the longer single videos? And remember, next week, I'm going to be doing a video on the 5 reasons why Joe Biden could win in 2020.